Welcome to Metaphysical Soul Speak. I'm your host, Elena Fox Starks. Hey guys, I hope you're doing really well in this very moment. I don't know what moment of time you're going to be listening to this show, when you will be or where, what timeline you might be on, or what dimension even. I think that people in the fifth dimension can hear me. Possibly the third, probably the seventh and ninth even. Who knows? We're not worried about radio signals since we're using the internet. So I think it's accessible by a lot more beings than earthlings. And howdy, hey ho there. I don't know what they say, so I'm ad-libbing here. Anyway, I don't know. A lot of people that normally would listen to the show didn't listen to the show yesterday. And if you're one of those that thought, well, we've heard from Michael Sherahan of Plieadian Ashtar Command many, many times, and it's always the same. It's not always the same. In fact, the information that he gave me yesterday, or gave us all about our chakras and how each chakra has a sphere around our body. And he told us exactly how that functions and how far out our chakras, when certain chakras come online, how far does that extend our auras and our influence and our vibrational energy, and therefore our magic and our completeness as divine humans. The information, it actually, it helped me. Yesterday, my 12th chakra was at 24% open, because, you know, you're not born with the 12th chakra open. Maybe you are if you're Ascended Master, if you have them all opened, but it's something that you have to ask for, and you have to work towards opening it. You know, you can't just hope someday it happens. Like with the first 7 chakras, you kind of, it's like you not even aware they exist, and then when you find out, you're like, well, I don't know what to do, and well, I hope it happens. I don't know. Open, open, open. Tapping on that glass. Open, open, open. Like the old-fashioned Mervids commercial. But I was at 24% yesterday at the end of the show. Published it, asked my higher guidance, and I was at 24%. I goes, that mean I'll be at 30%? And the answer is yes. But I'm actually at 80% open now. In one night, because I've been using the methods that the Plieadians gave us yesterday in that message. So if you haven't listened and you kind of thought, well, whatever, what's the message going to be? Love and light, we're all ascending, blah, blah, blah. My messages from the Plieadians are different than Plieadian messages from other people. You know, there was some lady that put out one about the ETs are putting grids around the earth right now to awaken other people. And her message was on YouTube, and it just released like today. But she had published it 2 or 3 days ago. So the day before I channeled Michael Sherahan, she channeled Michael Sherahan. I mean, he channels to a lot of different people, but every message is different, you know. And my message didn't talk about grids at all yesterday from him. So it was kind of funny. It's like, oh yeah. And she's too afraid to use her voice to read on her channel, which is very sad. I think she should. Because when you're channeling higher beings, what happens is you imbue the message with your own energy and you infuse it with the downloads, the upgrades, and the light codes that those beings are channeling through your voice and through the words that they choose to tell you, in what order. And their presence is with me, and therefore it's with you, even if I'm not I'm an indirect channel, not a direct channel, but it doesn't matter because the being is in the room with me. I can feel them sitting near me or sitting in front of me or sometimes standing in front of me. Yesterday, Michael Sherhan was standing slightly to my right and in front of me. And he was kind of standing like at command, like standing up, his legs, his feet a little bit far apart, just a little bit, like shoulders width apart. And he had his hands clasped over his, maybe like his third chakra. And I can't see the beings with my eyes. I see them with my higher dimensional sight, my third eye. And then a little bit with my eighth chakra, which helps actually to see things that you can't see with your physical eyes. So I want you guys to work on this stuff. And I want you, if you have not listened to the show from yesterday, go back and listen to it because you're going to be really shocked, right? So like the 12th chakra, what I've discovered since working with this is that the outer shell, the energy force field of the shell of the 12 chakras sphere that it creates around your body as it's starting to complete. And I see mine right now in my mind's eye, and it's like a bluish white light with rainbow swirly colors. Every second it's changing and changing and changing and changing. It's like a swirly rainbow that is vivid and alive and vibrant. And when he said you're becoming rainbow humans, look at your skin and there's your proof under a magnifying glass in the sun. But an app, not an actual. You don't want to burn yourself. You don't want to fry ants on the sidewalk, and you don't want to burn your own skin under the sun with a magnifying glass. But there's a magnifying glass app where you can magnify your skin like 50 to 60 times. And then you put your skin underneath the sun and you take a picture. You can be like, holy moly. My skin never did that before. I remember when I was really, really little, I would sit in the sun a lot. And my mom wouldn't let me sit in the sun, but sometimes she'd be like making my lunch and I would maybe scooch my blanket over into the sun a little bit because I wanted to see my skin in the sun. And when I was really little, I was never allowed to go in the sun. My parents were super overly protective and cautious. I'm a redhead, you know. They were always scared I was going to get a sunburn. They didn't want to ever see me hurt. They were really good to me, you know. And so, at least until I was 5, and then they divorced, and they were still good to me, but they were broken people after that. And so a lot of bad things happened to me after they broke up. And they were really good people before that, and they were good people after that, of course, obviously. Just more preoccupied with problems, you know. A lot of you have gone through the same thing with broken homes. Whether you were, you know, a child doing it or having children, and it happens. It's happened to me. It's, you know, things that happen. But anyway, I remember seeing in the sun when I was like 3 years old, and I'd squint my eyes and kind of make my gaze a little bit phased out. And I'd look at my skin, and I remember it was just like normal skin, but sometimes I'd see white, little teeny tiny white lights dancing on my skin. And it might have been sweat, I don't know. But, you know, beads of sweat, I honestly don't know. But even when my hand was dry, I noticed that there'd be like little teeny tiny white light, like little white lights. But it wasn't really like glowing or something. It was just normal. It was just, and that's what skin was. But now when I look at my skin, I mean, I'm seeing pink, green, blue, yellow, you know, kind of an ultraviolet, sort of reddish, hot pink color. A little bit of like a pale, peachy orange. It's like, but it's a rainbow. We're becoming rainbows. And I know that my skin is whiter than ever before. I noticed like 2 years ago that suddenly my face is whiter than it has ever been in my whole life. And I'm like, what the hell? I've been in South America for 3 years and I'm getting whiter. This is absolutely not fair. I thought for sure, living at the equator where the sun is the damn strongest, that I would at least get some kind of freaking color in my skin. And when you look up close, I'm getting all the rainbows in my skin, but I'm not, and I'm just pale as hell. But my skin has a shiny hue, and I've started to notice it in shows that were made like a year ago. And I did mention this a few days ago, shows that were made about a year ago and this year. If you look on a very big screen TV, like cast your Netflix to a Google Chrome or an Apple TV device and watch your shows on a big screen and start noticing that the shininess of people's skin, it's like a rainbow shimmer, and it is really beautiful, and it's different than what people's skin look like. If you look at something that's 5, 6, 7, 10, or 20 years old, if someone had a shiny look to their skin, it just looked like shiny. There was no rainbow colors in it. Not like now, it's way different. It's really, really strange. And, at first I was thinking it was makeup, which I mentioned before, and, even yesterday. And that's what Michael Shearhan said. No, he saw that in my subconscious mind. He's like, no, it's not makeup. And this morning I looked in the mirror at myself, and I was still in my night clothes before I got dressed. And so my décolletage area was a little bit showing. I'm a very conservative dresser. Usually I'm just wearing like guy clothes, sweats from the men's section and t-shirts. But my décolletage area was showing, which if you guys don't know, it's like between the chest and the neck area, right? So kind of like the lower neck. And it was shiny and glowing and shimmery like what I thought was makeup. And that was me. And I just woke up. I just took a shower last night, woke up with clean skin, and there it is, that I had that look, that shiny rainbow thing. And I'm like, woo. I want you guys to start paying attention to it. And I want you to pay attention to how your face shape is changing every day. And I also want you guys to pay attention to the blackness in your eyes, the pupils. Are they changing shape? I mean, about a year ago, mine were like six-sided. Not a circle, but like a six-sided circle with points, kind of roundy points. And about a week ago, I looked in the mirror and my eyes looked like cat eyes. And I took a picture and my eyes looked normal, and I looked in the mirror again and they look like cat eyes again. And I'm like, what? Is it my vision? But like, why do they both look the same? Why every time I look, it looks the same? And I don't know if it's a Lyran trying to overtake my body, so I have the cat overlay, or if it's just my perception, or if my eyesight is going. I don't know what it is, but I've noticed that my eyes are changing. They change shapes, they change colors. About a month ago, my son was like, whoa, your eyes are really turquoise blue. And my eyes were very pale turquoise and bright, like glowing. Next day, they were like blue, which was weird because I normally have green eyes. But my eyes have been turquoise, they've been blue, they've been green, they've been a lot more like of a golden amber brown mixed with green. And then sometimes they've been like an emerald green, straight up emerald green. My eyes have always changed colors, but not like this. So I want you guys to pay attention to your eye color and your eye, the black part of your eye. And whatever you see, note it. And then, like if you have a little notebook, you wanted like, ascension or earth changes or body changes, you might want to have a little notebook or section of one of your notebooks. Did you notice the rainbow shimmer today? Did you see the crystalline forms in your skin under a magnifying glass app? It's really, really freaky. I wanted to remind you about the Rife app, the Z app, Z-app, the Zap app. For anything that you need to raise your vibration, that's an easy way to do it. If you can't stand the sound, put earbuds in and listen to music with one device and then use another device to play the frequency tone to help yourself, because it absolutely will. So, I'm sorry, I just got really distracted because I'm looking at Riverside County, United States. It's a Google Digital Globe USDA Earth Farm Service Agency picture from Google Earth, and I'm looking at a really beautiful in the hills of Riverside. I see 3 faces, and one of them is like a very beautiful woman. And she has, it looks like a leaf over one eye, but her eye, lips, nose, shape of her head, she's bald. So she's a nature spirit. Oh, wow, now her head just turned. Sometimes nature spirits will let you see them. You could see a picture and see it right away, and you're like, whoa. And then the next time you see the picture, they might not allow you to see them. They could phase in and out even in photographs. It's really, really trippy. But our 12th chakra is the biggest sphere and the farthest away from our body. And it's really thick. It's like 2 feet to 3 feet thick, that shell. And it's like a big complete circle all the way around us. And it's shimmery rainbow lights. And I've been very aware of mine lately. I don't know at what point the Merkaba actually kicks in and starts spinning and all that. I have a feeling it's once your 12 chakras open. I want to maybe do a show soon on the Merkaba, because it's very, very, very fascinating as far as topics are concerned. If you don't know what your Merkaba is, a Merkaba or Merkaba means spirit, light, body. I don't know why they say that Mer means spirit, but it also means ocean or sea. Mer, like mermaid. I know this because I had a character in one of my scripts that I wrote, and her last name was I can't remember, but it had the MER in it. I made it up. Merton, yeah, like sea time. Like it was almost like she's like a mermaid. You know, she had that mermaid energy, even though she was growing grapes, but in Monterey County, and she was like a mermaid. And she wasn't a mermaid that might have been a more interesting script, to be honest, but but you know, basically a ton of sea, you know, or a ton of soul or spirit, which makes sense for the character because she was a very strong-willed woman and stubborn. So So Merkaba, spirit, light, body. And it's like if you look at the Jewish Star of David, or just the Star of David, but it's a symbol for Jewish faith. And it's a triangle facing up and a triangle facing down, and one is imposed over the other. But imagine that, and imagine if those triangles were not just flat triangles, but pyramids. And now imagine one spinning one direction and one spinning the other direction. And imagine there's a little capsule at the very dead center of that you could sit in, and this thing will fly and take you up and take you anywhere in the world, all over the world and all over the galaxy. You could travel in your spirit light body. That's what I've heard this is. So it's pretty crazy, but I'm going to see if I can't find a way to activate it. If there's anything online about it, there might be by now. When I first heard of this 20 years ago, it was like, woo, this is so weird. It was 20 years ago. Wow, I heard about it about the time my firstborn was a baby. So, and he's going to be 20 next year. So it was almost 20 years ago that this information came out. I don't know how true it is, but I have felt mine sometimes amping and revving up, and I feel this at my back. I feel like a spinning motion, like a gyroscope around me, and then I hear this sort of sound, kind of like I guess a lightsaber, and it gives my spine a tingly electrical sensation. So I don't know. I mean, that could be my fire element, magical energy revving up. It might have been my Kundalini, but I thought it might have been my Merkaba. I don't know. But there have been many times where I felt like something was happening, and I started to lift up off my bed an inch or two, and I wasn't off my bed totally, but my body was like lifting up, and I felt lighter. Very interesting stuff. So I wonder about all this. I wonder about it. But I know that my 12th chakra is almost completely open. If some really cool and freaky things start happening, I'm going to let you guys know. But I want to tell you right now that all the information I got in my channel from yesterday gave me enough information to start opening it up in a big way. But I'm only accepting as much energy as I can physically handle. And I've been hot and sweaty all day from how intense this energy has been. It's been pretty incredible. So I wanted to share that with you guys in case you missed the show and you thought, I don't want to hear from him again. You know, I mean, most people do like Michael Sherahan's. I'm hoping it was Friday night and people just were out, you know, having fun with their friends or partying or whatever. And that might be the very case. And a lot of you do commute Monday through Friday with my stuff. And then my numbers drop off during the weekends. So I'm thinking, though, next year, and if you guys won't give me feedback on this, but I think I'm really going to do this, is that I'm probably next year going to start playing my favorite episodes from this year on the weekends and call it the best of, so that I can have my weekends free. I'll just wake up in the morning and release another best of. And when I release the best of, then, you know, then I could have time to myself. If I might find a guest host, though, we'll see. If any of you want to volunteer to be my guest host starting next January, let me know. That's coming up in a few months. So it just depends. I may not. I may still keep going. I definitely am going to do this for 365 episodes, 365 days in a row. And then I'm going to reassess and see. Maybe I'll just do the best of, maybe I'll just do it for, 2 days a month at first. But my son has been expressing an interest in going camping with me. And I've been thinking it's a little bit unfair that I have to stay within the range of Wi-Fi when he really wants to go out and go camping and fishing and building a fire to feed ourselves. And I think I don't want to rob my son of that experience. So we're trying to find a campsite that's near enough to a restaurant with Wi-Fi. And I'm planning on getting some camping equipment in the next few months so I could have that experience with my boy. You know, I had the experience with my own father, and his father died. So I think I have to be mother and father. And so there it is. It's just what has to happen. But I don't mind it at all, although I don't even like eating fish and catching fish and gutting fish. I know how, though. My dad taught me how to be an expert, so I'm going to teach my kid. And you know what they say, you teach someone to fish, they can eat for a lifetime. So I want to give that gift to my kid. All right. Disclosure News.it in the morning report, 10:30, says the strong activity of yesterday was followed by a period of calm that lasted about 9 hours until 23 UTC yesterday. But from that moment on, a moderate but continuous activity began, which generated various peaks at 25 hertz between 7 and 8:30. And then the next report, which I don't know, it says 10:30 again, but it's probably the evening report. Today's movements lasted 14 hours from 23 UTC yesterday. The highest peaks are those reported previously, and the situation is now calm. So, in a nutshell, what did they say? The thing that usually says the number, just 25. It wasn't too much. So there you have it. Now this one is a little strange today. The heartmath.org website. In California, they started off at midnight at 135 hertz frequency on the Schumann Resonance scale, and they were up to 137 at 4 a.m. So high, and did not change much in 4 hours. Now, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in Hofuf, they started at 0 and they ended at 0. It's quickly becoming a Hulului situation. And it's weird that they crossed they literally made an X right on the screen. If you go to heartmath.org and look on the 17th of September, Hulului suddenly started with activity again. And the moment that happened in Saudi Arabia, the activity of the Schumann Resonance went down. I'm really curious. I wish I had a globe, man. I want to look at how far is Hulului from Saudi Arabia, and that's kind of that's like a far jaunt, but I want to know, are they on the same ley line? I'm really interested in this. I don't know. Lithuania started off at midnight at 22 on the Schumann Resonance scale, and they were 0 by 4 a.m. It would be very interesting if they zero out too. I have no idea what will happen to that, but we're going to look tomorrow to see what Lithuania is doing. Now, Alberta, Canada is way the hell up there, like always. 270 hertz frequency at midnight, followed by 281 at 4 a.m. And in Northland, New Zealand, they started off at 59 hertz frequency and only went up 4 to 63 hertz frequency. Now, Hulului is having a lot of activity, making up for lost time, no doubt. They started off at midnight at 172 hertz frequency, and they went up down to 166 hertz frequency on the Schumann Resonance scale. So that's it's pretty crazy, man. Pretty crazy, guys. Let's see. Now we're going to go to A Course in Miracles, Foundation for Inner Peace. And let's see where we are. I believe we did this one yesterday. I share God's will for happiness for me. Let's see. I think that was the one we read yesterday. Damn it, I did not have this one queued up. Oh yeah, I was having problems. That's why. I remember what happened is I got the two websites to refresh, and then this one I couldn't get to refresh, so I shut off my computer and I waited for it to turn back on, and I thought everything was queued up, and I went back and queued those two, and then I forgot this one. All right, here we go. We should be at lesson 103. All right. Oh, this is a good one. Yay! I love this one so much. Okay. acim.org, or you can download an app in A Course in Miracles. There's many to choose from, so pick your favorite color and just run with it. But today's lesson's idea is God being love is also happiness. God being love is also happiness. Happiness is an attribute of love. It cannot be apart from it, nor can it be experienced where love is not. Love has no limits, being everywhere, and therefore joy is everywhere as well. Yet can the mind deny that this is so, believing there are gaps in love where sin can enter, bringing pain instead of joy? This strange belief would limit happiness by redefining love as limited and introducing opposition in what has no limit and no opposite. So fear is associated then with love, and its results become the heritage of minds that think that they have made what they have made is real. These images with no reality and truth bear witness to the fear of God, forgetting being love, that he must be joy. This basic error we will try again to bring to truth today and teach ourselves this. God, being love, is also happiness. To fear him is to be afraid of joy. So, I've had so many men say, oh, I'm looking for a good woman. I want a woman who fears God. Do you fear God? And I'm like, hell no. Why would I fear love? I absolutely, like, that's so silly. Like, why would you say you want a relationship with me and that you are afraid of God? To me, that means God is love. You're afraid of love? I definitely don't want to be with a man who's afraid of love or God. Do you see how ass backwards the whole world has been? No wonder there are so many wars in the name of fear. Oops. You see? Men that quote unquote fear God, and then they go to war and they go off to battle in the name of the God that they fear. They try to strike fear in the hearts of other men while themselves also being in a foxhole praying to a God they're afraid of. What the flock, people? Wake up! God is love. Love is God. God is love. It's all the same. My ex-boyfriend broke up with me 3 years ago. My last actual boyfriend. The one that was in Peru. And after we broke up, he still wanted to see me. He's like, I just know that I don't have what it takes to be in a relationship right now. And I don't know that I'll ever be like, what do you say? I don't know what the word was in Spanish, but I looked it up. And it was basically he's saying, I've been too selfish. I need a lot of time alone. And it wasn't fair to you, and you weren't happy, and I wasn't happy. And I do love you, and I do want you in my life. And he even offered, it's like so weird. He's like, well, when you're older, you know, when your kids are grown and they've left home, and if you don't have any money or anything, I'll take care of you. Come back and live with me. And I'm like, so you want to be in a relationship with me in 2 years? Is that it? When my kids are gone? And he's like, oh no, I don't want to be in a relationship with you. I just want you to live with me. I'm like, why don't you want a relationship? And he said to me, I'll never forget this. He just looked at me and he goes, because love hurts so much and love is so hard and love breaks people's hearts. And I'm like, no, love doesn't do that at all. You're wrong. And he got so shocked. He's like, what? I go, love is perfect. Love is kind, and God is love. It's the complete perfect energy of God. And so when you are feeling love, you're in that bliss, you're in that flow, and everything is great. But the thing is, it's the relationships that can screw with you, and the people's personalities, and not accepting one another, and not believing the same, or thinking that you should have your way, and being a bully on the playground in kindergarten can translate into bad behavior in a relationship as adults. Love never hurts. Love is perfect and kind. But people hurt people. But love never hurts people. So I said that to him, and he was like, oh. And he thought about it for a while, and he's like, okay. And he's like, I still don't want a relationship. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's okay. I understand it. That's okay. It's totally fine with me. Because I just, you know, it's like I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who dreads being in a relationship. And since we broke up, you know, and he is a narcissist, and so I'm glad to be away from it too. But from his craziness, his narcissistic craziness, it's just, you know, boundaries that were broken. And, you know, most of the time he was good, though. He was a classic narcissist, but not like, I don't know, not as bad as other people I've met. But still enough for me to be like, okay, that's it. Bye. See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. But I still talk to him every now and again. He's the only person in the world who I can 100% understand in Spanish all of the time. And he 100% understands my really crazy chopped up Castellano accent. I don't speak with an accent from one country, but from 6 different countries, coupled out with my little bit of Southern twang and my Kentucky drawl and my California and my North Dakota, Minnesota jumbled up accent I had anyway. And I mean, my Spanish is really crazy. And a lot of people are like, what? And he understood every word. He understood the way my mind thought. And it was really lovely. You know, so every now and again, I like to have a conversation with him just because I don't feel like a moron trying to speak in Spanish, and he does not understand a single word in English, you know, so I have to really concentrate hard. And so it's helpful, at least mentally and intellectually, for me to try to master the Spanish for one conversation over the phone. I learn by seeing more than hearing, so it's really a challenge for me. But I enjoy it, you know. But having that conversation with them, it's just like this lesson. And you know what? God really is love. You should never fear God, ever fear God. Don't ever be afraid of the one who created you. Because he made you from himself. He made you with love. He loves you. You know, he counts the hairs on your head every night. He counts the cells in your body. He knows everything about you. And all he wants is that you love him, but you have the free will not to do so. That's why so many people fear him. But it is an insane idea. It's absolutely an insane idea to be afraid of God. There you have it. So God, being love, is also happiness. And it is happiness that I seek today. I cannot fail because I seek the truth. God, being love, is also happiness. To fear him is to be afraid of joy, right? So, but the main idea for today, lesson 103, God, being love, is also happiness. I guess it's true what they say is just if you want to be happy, put God first. It's pretty cool, right? That was a neat one. I like that lesson. Okay, now I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back, I have a treat for you guys tonight. I haven't read the book, so I'm going to discover it with you. And I'm making sure it's Saturday. Yeah. Wait, yeah, okay. Clairvoyance and Occult Powers is the name of the book. It was written in the year 1916. So 103 years ago. What the hell? We were on lesson 103. Oh, I'm getting chills. I'm getting like I'm getting hot chills. What the hell? Oh my God. Have you guys ever had the hot chills where it's like the chills, but it's like waves of heat? Oh my God, we're having a heat wave. A tropical heat wave. Oh my God. Ooh, I'm getting it out. It's so weird. I think it's my 12th chakra opening up, guys. I'm getting heat chills. It's like the chills, but they're hot. What the hell? That was so weird. Oh, you know what that means? Okay, this is another thing that means. Let's look up the angel number 103 real quick. Oh my God. Oh, this is so weird. Oh, I'm freaking out. In a good way, though. I feel myself working in a grander sense with the divine, but I'm working as a co-creator and a conspirator for your own good. I don't know. I am like working at one with God, but it's not. He works through me, yes, but he's not overpowering me and making me do things, and I'm not going, oh, forget out like your ideas and doing my own thing. Like, we're like co-creators right now. And I've been feeling this more than I ever have before in the past week or two, as soon as my 12th chakra started to open. Angel number 103. The more that you stay optimistic, the more easily God and the ascended masters, such as the saints, Jesus, and so on, can help you. I love how it's like all tied also to the law of attraction, all of this stuff. I'm just blown away. All right, guys, this book I'm about to read to you is by Swami Panchadasi. He is the author of The Human Aura and The Astral World, etc., which means he wrote a lot of books. Now, in the next few weeks, this is what we're going to go over every Saturday until we're done reading the book. Clairvoyance and clairaudience, premonition and impressions, clairvoyant psychometry, clairvoyant crystal gazing, distant clairvoyance, past clairvoyance, future clairvoyance, second sight, prevision, clairvoyant development, astral body traveling. Oh, thank God, I've been looking for something good on this. Astral plane phenomena. Oh, very, very helpful. Psychic influence, personal and distant. Psychic attraction, psychic healing, telepathy and mind reading. Yeah, telepathy is a two-way street. Mind reading is a one-way street. And thought transference and other psychic phenomena. That's the name of the chapters. That's incredible, right? So every week it's going to be a little bit different. And every lesson is a little bit different or a little bit deeper into the subject matter or completely different, but related, subject to clairvoyance and occult powers. And I'm going to read this to you right after this. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's high time you did. It is the absolute easiest way to make a podcast. First of all, it's absolutely free. Second of all, they have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. You guys have known that I've been doing this for 8 months using the Anchor.fm app right on my cell phone, and I have done it everywhere, right? I have recorded this in my living room, my bedroom, little cafes in Quito, Ecuador, all over Cuenca. It's so absolutely easy to make your podcast, and editing is just a snap. Anchor also will distribute your podcast for you, and it took me about 2.5 months to become syndicated, and now I'm available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more, and so can you. You can make money from your podcast also, and there's no minimum requirement. You get paid from your very first listener. It is everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. So please, if you are interested in making a podcast of your very own, do not hesitate to start with Anchor. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Metaphysical Soul Speak is run on sponsors and listener support. This means listeners like you. If you are so inclined to support my efforts and my little podcast, please visit me at anchor.fm/metaphysical and pledge an amount of your choosing today. Thank you. All right, guys. Clairvoyance and Occult Powers was written by Swami Panchadasi in 1916. I'm going to skip over the introduction, but I'm going to rephrase what he said basically. You can go to Gutenberg.org to look up this book if you want to sneak peek ahead, see what we're going to read next week, or if you wanted to read the introduction. He's basically saying that in India they use parables and fables and cosmic principles and metaphysical ideas and spiritual philosophy to teach. And the students accept what the teachers say because they've been hearing these stories since they were little, and everyone's familiar with the basic stories. And so the method of teaching is different in India, but he knows that the Western mind is more skeptical and we need proof. So even 100 years ago, we needed that proof. And so with that in mind, he decided to take away a lot of the parables and fables and the things that would make us go, well, yeah, but where's the proof, right? And he put everything, and he took a lot of the philosophical and metaphysical discussions out because he wanted to make it very factual feeling. And so he also took out the stories of people that were clairvoyant or psychic, or going through these experiences in India, because it's hard for a Westerner to go to India and look this stuff up in the languages there, like Hindi, or there's like a few languages spoken there. So he decided to find his examples in the Western world, and he did. And those are the examples in which he used for the book, so that we can easily go and look them up and research it ourselves. And it'll help us prove to ourselves that this is real and factual. And therefore, we will take in the information once our need for our healthy skepticism is satisfied. Then we could take in the information. He was obviously a very smart man, because, to understand the two basic differences of our worlds, it's very important. Okay, let's get right down to it, guys. Okay, lesson 1, the astral senses. The student of occultism usually is quite familiar with the crass individual who assumes the cheap skeptical attitude toward occult matters, which attitude he expresses in his would-be smart remark that he believes only what his senses perceive. That's called materialism, right? That is what materialism the live long and prosper that Spock does on, that symbol literally means only what your senses perceive. It is it's from the devil card in the tarot. Sorry, getting back to the book. He seems to think that his cheap wit has finally disposed of the matter. The implication being that the occultist is a credulous, easy person who believes in the existence of things contrary to the evidence of the senses. While the opinions or views of persons of this class are, of course, beneath the serious concern of any true student of occultism, nevertheless, the mental attitude of such persons are worthy of our passing consideration, inasmuch as it serves to give us an object lesson regarding the childlike attitude of the average so-called practical persons regarding the matter of the evidence of the senses. Now, these so-called practical persons have much to say regarding their senses. They are very fond of speaking of the evidence of my senses. They also have much to say about the possession of good sense on their part, of having sound common sense. And often they make the strange boast that they have horse sense, seeming to consider this a great possession. Alas for the pretensions of this class of persons. They are usually found quite credulous regarding matters beyond their everyday field of work and thought, and accept without question the most ridiculous teachings and dogmas, reaching them from a voice of some claimed authority, while they sneer at some advanced teaching which their minds are incapable of comprehending. Anything which seems unusual to them is deemed flighty and lacking an appeal to their much prized horse sense. But it is not my intention to spend time in discussing these insignificant halfpenny intellects. Ooh. Oh. Half-penny intellects. Oh, this is going to be a ride, this book. All right. I have merely alluded to them in order to bring to your mind the fact that to many persons, the idea of quote-unquote sense and that of quote-unquote senses is very closely allied. They consider all knowledge and wisdom as sense, and all such sense as being derived directly from their five senses. They ignore almost completely the intuitional phases of the mind and are unaware of many of the higher processes of reasoning. Such persons accept as undoubted anything that their senses report to them. They consider it heresy to question a report of the senses. One of their favorite marks is that, quote unquote, it almost makes me doubt my senses, unquote. They fail to perceive that their senses at the best are very imperfect instruments, that the mind is constantly employed in correcting the mistaken report of the ordinary five senses. Not to speak of the common phenomenon of color blindness, in which one color seems to be another. Our senses are far from being exact. We may, by suggestion, be made to imagine that we smell or taste certain things which do not exist, and hypnotic subjects may be caused to see things that have no existence save in the imagination of the person. The familiar experiment of the person crossing his first two fingers, placing them on a small object such as a pea or top of a lead pencil, shows us that how mixed the sense of feeling becomes at times. The many familiar instances of optical delusions show us that even our sharp eyes may deceive us. Every conjurer knows how easy it is to deceive the eye by suggestion and false movements. Perhaps the most familiar example of mistaken sense reports is that of the movement of the earth. The senses of every person report to him that the earth is a fixed, immovable body, and that the sun, moons, planets, and stars move around the earth every 24 hours. It is only when one accepts the reports of the reasoning faculties that he knows that the earth not only whirls around on its axis every 24 hours, but that it circles around the sun every 365 days, and that even the sun itself, carrying with it the earth and the other planets, really moves along in space, moving toward or around some unknown point far distant from it. If there is any one particular report of the senses which would seem to be beyond doubt or question, it certainly would be this elementary sense report of the fixedness of the earth beneath our feet and the movements of the heavenly bodies around it. And yet we know this is merely an illusion and that the facts of the case are totally different. Again, how few persons really realize that the eye perceives things upside down and that the mind only gradually acquires the trick of adjusting the impression. I'm not trying to make any of you doubt the report of his or her five senses. That would be most foolish, for all of us must needs depend upon these five senses in our everyday affairs and would soon come to grief were we to neglect their reports. Instead, I'm trying to acquaint you with the real nature of these five senses, and that you may realize what they are not, as well as what they are, and also that you may realize that there is no absurdity in believing that there are more channels of information open to the ego or soul of the person than these much used five senses. When you once get a correct scientific conception of the real nature of the five ordinary senses, you will be able to intelligently grasp the nature of the higher psychic faculties or senses, and thus be better fitted to use them. So, let us take a few moments' time in order to get this fundamental knowledge well fixed in our minds. What are the five senses anyway? Now, your first answer will be feeling, seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling. But that's merely a recital of the different forms of sensing. What is a sense when you get right down to it? Well, you will find that the dictionary tells us that a sense is a faculty possessed by animals of perceiving external objects by means of impressions made upon certain organs of the body. Getting right down to the roots of the matter, we find that the five senses of man are the channels through which he becomes aware or conscious of information concerning objects outside of himself. But these senses are not the sense organs alone. Back of the organs, there is a peculiar arrangement of the nervous system or brain centers which take up the messages received through the organs. And back of this, again, is the ego or soul or mind, which at the last is the real knower. The eye is merely a camera. The ear, merely a receiver of sound waves. The nose, merely an arrangement of sensitive mucous membrane. The mouth and tongue, simply a container of taste buds. The nervous system, merely a sensitive apparatus designed to transmit messages to the brain and other centers, all being but part of the physical machinery, and liable to impairment or destruction. Back of all this apparatus is the real knower who makes use of it. Science tells us that all five senses, that of touch or feeling, was the original, the fundamental sense. All the rest are held to be but modifications of and specialized forms of this original sense of feeling. I am telling you this not merely in the way of interesting or instructive scientific information, but also because an understanding of this fact will enable you to more clearly comprehend that which I shall have to say to you about the higher faculties or senses. Many of the lowly and simple forms of animal life have made this one sense only, and that but poorly developed. The elementary life form feels the touch of its food or of other objects which may touch it. The plants also have something akin to the sense, which in some cases, like that of the sensitive plant, for instance, is quite well developed. Long before the sense of sight or the sensitiveness to light appeared in animal life, we find evidences of taste and something like rudimentary hearing or sensitiveness to sounds. Smell gradually developed from the sense of taste, with which even now it is closely connected. In some forms of lower animal life, the sense of smell is much more developed than in mankind. Hearing evolved in due time from the rudimentary feeling of vibrations. Sight, the highest of the senses, came last and was an evolution of the elementary sensitiveness to light. But you see, all these senses are but modifications of the original sense of feeling or touch. The eye records the touch or feeling of the light waves which strike upon it. The ear records the touch or feeling of the sound waves or vibrations of the air which reach it. The tongue and other seats of taste record the chemical touch of the particles of food or other substances coming in contact with the taste buds. The nose records the chemical touch of the gases or fine particles of material which touch its mucous membrane. The sensory nerves record the presence of outer objects coming in contact with the nerve ends in various parts of the skin of the body. You see that all of these senses merely record the contact or touch of outside objects. But the sense organs themselves do not do the knowing of the presence of the objects. They are but pieces of delicate apparatus serving to record or to receive primary impressions from outside. Wonderful as they are, they have their counterparts in the works of man, as for instance the camera or artificial eye, the phonograph or artificial ear, the delicate chemical apparatus or artificial taster and smeller, the telegraph or artificial nerves. Ooh. Not only this, but there are also to be found nerve telegraph wires conveying the message of the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue to the brain, telling the something in the brain of what has been felt at the other end of the line. Sever the nerves leading to the eye, and though the eye will continue to register perfectly, still no message will reach the brain, and render the brain unconscious, and no message will reach it from the nerves connecting the eye, or ear, nose, tongue, or surface of the body. There is much more to the receiving of sense messages than you would think at first, you see. Now, all this means that the ego, or soul, or mind, if you prefer the term, is the real knower who becomes aware of the outside world by means of the messages of the senses. Cut off from these messages, the mind would almost be a blank. So far as outside objects are concerned, every one of the senses so cut off would mean a diminishing or cutting off of a part of the world of the ego. And likewise, each new sense adding to the list and likewise, each new sense added to the list tends to widen and increase the world of the ego. We do not realize this as a rule. Instead, we are in the habit of thinking that the world consists of just so many things and facts, and that we know every possible one of them. This is the reasoning of a child. Think how very much smaller the world of the average person is the world of the person born blind or the person born deaf. Likewise, think of how very much greater and wider and more wonderful this world of ours would seem were each of us to find ourselves suddenly endowed with a new sense. How much more would we perceive? How much more would we feel? How much more would we know? How much more would we have to talk about? Why, we are really in about the same position as the poor girl born blind who said that she thought that the color of scarlet must be something like the sound of a trumpet. Poor thing, she could form no conception of color, never having seen a ray of light. She could think and speak only in terms of touch, sound, taste, and smell. And had she also been deaf, she would have been robbed of a still greater share of her world. Think over these things a little. Now, suppose, on the contrary, that we had a new sense which would enable us to sense the waves of electricity. In that case, we would be able to feel what was going on at another place, perhaps on the other side of the world, or maybe on one of the other planets. Or suppose that we could have an X-ray sense. We could just then see through a stone wall inside the rooms of a house. If our vision were improved by the addition of a telescopic adjustment, we could see what's going on in Mars and could send and receive communications with those living there. What did he know, guys? Whoa. Or, if with a microscopic adjustment, we could see all the secrets of a drop of water. Maybe it is well that we cannot do this. On the other hand, if we had a well-developed telepathic sense, we would be aware of the thought waves of others to an extent, such an extent, that there would be no secrets left hidden to anyone. Wouldn't that alter life and human intercourse a great deal? These things would really be no more wonderful than is the evolution of the senses we have. We can do some of these things by apparatus designed by the brain of man. And man really is but an imitator and adapter of nature. Perhaps on some other world or planet, there may be beings having 7, 9, or 15 senses, instead of the poor little 5 known to us. Who knows? But it is not necessary to exercise the imagination in the direction of picturing beings on other planets endowed with more senses than have the people of Earth. While, as the occult teachings positively state, there are beings on other planets whose senses are as much higher than the Earthman's, as the latters are higher than those of the oyster. Still, we do not have to go so far to find instances of the possession of much higher and more active faculties than those employed by the ordinary man. But we have but to consider the higher psychical faculties of man right here and right now in order to see what new worlds are open to him. When you reach a scientific understanding of these things, you will see that there really is nothing at all supernatural about much of the great body of wonderful experiences of men in all times in which the quote-unquote horse sense man sneeringly dismisses as queer and contrary to sense. You will see that these experiences are quite as natural as are those in which the ordinary 5 senses are employed. Though they are superphysical, there is the greatest difference between supernatural and superphysical, you must realize. All occultists know that man has other senses than the ordinary 5, although but few men have developed them sufficiently well to use them effectively. These superphysical senses are known to occultists as the astral senses. The term astral, used so frequently by all occultists, ancient and modern, is derived from the Greek word astra, meaning star. It is used to indicate those planes of being immediately above the physical plane. The astral senses are really the counterparts of the physical senses of man, and are connected with the astral body of the person, just as the physical senses are connected with the physical body. The office of these astral senses is to enable the person to receive impressions on the astral plane, just as enable him to receive impressions on the physical plane. On the physical plane, the mind of man receives only the sense impressions of the physical organs of sense, but when the mind functions and vibrates on the astral plane, it requires astral senses in order to receive the impressions of that plane, and these, as we shall see, are present. Each one of the physical senses of man has its astral counterpart. Thus, man has in latency the power of seeing, feeling, tasting, smelling, and hearing on the astral plane by means of his 5 astral senses. More than this, the best occultists know that man really has 7 physical senses instead of but 5, though these 2 additional senses are not unfolded in the case of the average person. though occultists who have reached a certain stage are able to use them effectively. Even these two extra physical senses have their counterparts on the astral plane. Persons who have developed the use of their astral senses are able to receive the sense impressions of the astral plane just as clearly as they receive those on the physical plane by means of the physical senses. Now, for instance, a person is thus able to perceive things occurring on the astral plane, to read the Akashic records of the past, to perceive things that are happening in other parts of the world, to see past happenings as well, and in cases of peculiar development, to catch glimpses of the future, though this is far rarer than other forms of astral sight. Again, by means of clairaudience, the person may hear the things of the astral world, past as well as present, and in rare cases, the future. The explanation is the same in each case, merely the receiving of vibrations on the astral plane instead of on the physical plane. In the same way, the astral senses of smelling, tasting, and feeling operate. In the same way, the astral senses of smelling, tasting, and feeling operate. But though we have occasional instances of astral feeling in certain phases of psychic phenomena, we have practically no manifestation of astral smelling or tasting, although the astral senses are there ready for use. It is only in instances of traveling in the astral body that the last two mentioned astral senses, viz. Smell and taste, are manifested. The phenomena of telepathy, or thought transference, occurs on both the physical and the mental plane. On the physical plane, it is more or less spontaneous and erratic in manifestation, while on the astral plane, it is as clear, reliable, and responsive to demand as is astral sight, etc. The ordinary person has but occasional flashes of astral sensing, and as a rule is not able to experience the phenomenon at will. The trained occultist, on the contrary, is able to shift from one set of senses to the other by a simple act or effort of will, whenever he may wish to do so. Advanced occultists are often able to function on both physical and astral planes at the same time, though they do not often desire to do so. To vision astrally, the trained occultist merely shifts his sensory mechanism from physical to astral, or vice versa, just as the typewriter operator shifts from the small letter type to the capitals by simply touching the shift key of his machine. Many persons suppose that it is necessary to travel on the astral plane in the astral body in order to use the astral senses. This is a mistake. In instances of clairvoyance, astral visioning, psychometry, etc., the occultist remains in his physical body and senses the phenomena of the astral plane quite readily by means of the astral senses, just as he is able to sense the phenomena of the physical plane when he uses the physical organs quite more easily. In fact, in many instances, it is not even necessary for the occultist to enter into a trance condition in the majority of the cases. Travel in the astral body is quite another phase of occult phenomena and is far more difficult to manifest. The student should never attempt to travel in the astral body except under the instruction of some competent instructor. In crystal gazing, the occultist merely employs the crystal in order to concentrate his power and to bring to a focus his astral vision. There's no supernatural virtue in the crystal itself. It's merely a means to an end. a piece of useful apparatus to aid in the production of certain phenomena. In psychometry, some object is used in order to bring the occultist in rapport with the person or thing associated with it. But it is the astral senses which are employed in describing either the past environment of the thing or else the present or past doings of the person in question, etc. In short, the object is merely the loose end of the psychic ball of twine, while the psychometrist proceeds to wind or unwind at will. Psychometry is merely one form of astral seeing, just as is crystal gazing. In what is known as telekinesis or movement at a distance, there is found the employment of both astral sensing and astral will action, accompanied in many cases by actual projection of a portion of the substance of the astral body. In the case of clairvoyance, we have an instance of the simplest form of astral seeing, without the necessity of an associated object of psychometry or the focal point of a crystal and crystal gazing. This is true not only of the ordinary form of clairvoyance, in which the occultist sees astrally the happenings and doings at some distant point at the moment of observation, but it's also true of what is known as past clairvoyance, or astral seeing of past events, and in the seeing of future events as in prophetic vision, etc. These are all simply different forms of one and the same thing. Surely, some of you may say, these things are supernatural, far above the realm of natural law, and yet this man would have us believe otherwise. Softly, softly, dear reader. Do not jump at conclusions so readily. What do you know about the limits of natural law and phenomena? What right have you to assert that all beyond your customary range of sense, experience, is outside of nature? Do you not realize that you are attempting to place a limit upon nature, which in reality is illimitable? The man of a generation back of the present one would have been equally justified in asserting that the marvels of the wireless telegraphy were supernatural, had he been told of the possibility of their manifestation. Going back a little further, the father of that man would have said the same thing regarding the telephone, had anyone been so bold as to have prophesied it. Going back still another generation, imagine the opinion of some of the old men of that time regarding the telegraph. And yet these things are simply the discovery and application of certain of nature's wonderful powers and forces. Is it any more reasonable to suppose that nature has still a mine of undiscovered treasure in the mind and constitution of man, as well as in inorganic nature? No, friends, these things are as natural as the physical senses, and not a whit more of a miracle. It is only that we are accustomed to one and not the other that makes the astral senses seem more wonderful than the physical. Nature's workings are all wonderful, none more so than the other. All are beyond our absolute conception when we get down to their real essence. So, let us keep an open mind. Do you ever wish you could look into the next chapter in your book of life and see what's coming next? What does the universe have in store for you? I can help you with that I will give you a Celtic cross reading, which is 10 cards, or you can ask me 3 questions, and I use 3 cards per question. So that's 9 cards, or I can channel your higher guidance, or maybe God directly for you. Maybe you want to talk to your dear departed Aunt Edna, because maybe you have a few questions and she was the smartest person you knew. If your deceased relatives are available or your ascended masters, I can channel them for you personally. Let me have 1 hour to show you the future in your next chapter of your book of life. Readings are $75, and it takes me an hour to an hour and a half to complete. And for this price, you will also be hooked up to the healing grid around the planet for free, which means yours truly, me, I will be giving you Reiki 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of your life. All you have to do is let me know. metaphysicalsoulspeak@gmail.com, and we will explore your future together. Lesson 2, Telepathy versus Clairvoyance. In this work, I shall use the term clairvoyance in its broad sense of astral perception, as distinguished from perception by means of the physical senses. As we proceed, you will see the general and special meanings of the term, so there is no necessity for a special definition or illustration of the term at this time. By telepathy, I mean the sending and receiving of thought messages and mental and emotional states, consciously or unconsciously, by means of what may be called the 6th sense of the physical plane. There is, of course, a form of thought transference on the astral plane, but this I include under the general term of clairvoyance for reasons which will be explained later on. You will remember that in the preceding chapter, I told you that in addition to the five ordinary physical senses of man, there were also 2 other physical senses comparatively undeveloped in the average person. These 2 extra physical senses are respectively, number 1, the sense of the presence of other living things, and number 2, the telepathic sense. As I also told you, these 2 extra physical senses have their astral counterparts. They also have certain physical organs which are not generally recognized by physiologists or psychologists, but which are well known to all occultists. I shall now consider the first of the 2 above-mentioned extra-physical senses in order to clear the way for our consideration of the question of the distinction between ordinary telepathy and that form of clairvoyance, which is its astral counterpart. There is in every human being a sense which is not generally recognized as such, although nearly every person has had more or less experience regarding its workings. I refer to the sense of the presence of other living things, separate and apart from the operation of any of the 5 ordinary physical senses. I ask you to understand that I am not claiming that this is a higher sense than the other physical senses, or that it has come to man in a high state of evolution. On the contrary, the sense came to living things far back in the scale of evolution. It is possessed by the higher forms of the lower animals, such as the horse, dog, and the majority of the wild beasts, savage and barbaric men have it more highly developed than it is in the case of the civilized man. In fact, this physical sense may be termed almost vestigial in civilized man because he has not actively used it for many generations. For that matter, the physical sense of smell is also deficient in man, and for the very same reason, whereas in the case of the lower animals and savage man, the sense of smell is very keen. I mention this for fear of misunderstanding. In my little book, The Astral World, I have said, all occultists know that man really has 7 senses instead of merely 5. Though the additional 2 senses are not sufficiently developed for use in the average person, though the occultist generally unfolds them into use. Some have taken this to mean that the occultist develops these 2 extra physical senses just as he does certain higher psychic or astral faculties, but this is wrong. The occultist in such case merely reawakens these 2 senses, which have been almost lost to the race. By use and exercise, he then develops them to a wonderful proficiency for use on the physical plane. Now, this sense of the presence of other living beings is very well developed in the lower animals, particularly in those whose safety depends upon the knowledge of the presence of their natural enemies. As might be expected, the wild animals have it more highly developed than do domesticated animals, but even among the latter, we find instances of this sense being in active use. In the cases of dogs, horses, geese, etc., especially. Who of us is not familiar with the strange actions of the dog or the horse when the animal senses the unseen and unheard presence of some person or animal? Very often we would scold or punish the animal for its peculiar actions simply because we are not able to see what is worrying it. How often does a dog start suddenly, bristle up its hair when nothing is in sight or within hearing distance? And how often does a horse grow skittish or even panicky when there is nothing within sight or hearing? Domestic fowls, especially geese, manifest an uneasiness at this presence of strange persons or animals, though they may not be able to see or hear them. It is a matter of history that this makes sense. In a flock of geese once saved, it is a matter of history that this sense, in a flock of geese, once saved ancient Rome from an attack of the enemy. The night was dark and stormy, and the trained eyesight and keen hearing of the Roman outposts failed to reveal the approach of the enemy. But the keen sense of the geese felt the presence of strange men, and they started to cackle loudly, aroused the guard, and Rome was saved. Skeptical persons have sought to explain this historical case by the theory that the geese heard the approaching enemy. But this explanation will not serve, for the Roman soldiers were marching about on their posts and guard duty, and the geese remained silent until they sensed the approach of the small number of the enemy's scouts, when they burst into wild cries. The ancient Romans themselves were under no illusion about the matter. They recognized the existence of some unusual power in the geese, and they gave the animals the full credit therefor. Hunters in wild and strange lands have told us that often when they were lying concealed for the purpose of shooting the wild animals when they came within range, they have witnessed instances of the existence of this strange faculty in the wild beasts. though they could not see the concealed hunters nor smell them, as the wind was in the other direction. All of a sudden, one or more of the animals, generally an old female, would start suddenly, and a shiver would be seen to pass over its body. Then it would utter a low warning note, and away would fly the pack. Nearly every hunter has had the experience of watching his expected game when all of a sudden it would start off with a nervous jerk and, without waiting to sniff the air, as is usual, would bolt precipitately from the scene. Moreover, many beasts of prey are known to sense the presence of their natural prey, even when the wind is in the other direction, and there is no sound or movement made by the crouching, fear-stricken animal. Certain birds seem to sense the presence of particular worms upon which they feed, though the latter be buried several inches into the earth or in the bark of trees. Savage man also has this faculty developed, as all travelers and explorers well know. They are as keen as a wild animal to sense the nearness of enemies, or in some cases the approach of man-eating beasts. This does not mean that these savages are more highly developed than a civilized man, quite the reverse. This is the explanation. When man became more civilized and made himself more secure from his wild beast enemies, as well as from the sudden attacks of his human enemies, he began to use this sense less and less. Finally, in the course of many generations, it became almost atrophied from disuse and ceased reporting to the brain or other nervous centers. Or if you prefer viewing it from another angle, it may be said that the nerve centers and brain began to pay less and less attention to the reports of this sense, trusting more to sight and hearing, until the consciousness failed to awaken to the reports. You know how your consciousness will finally refuse to be awakened by familiar sounds, such as the noise of machinery in a shop or ordinary noises in the house, although the ears do receive the sound waves. Well, this is the way in the case of this neglected sense, for the two reasons just mentioned. The average person is almost unaware of his existence. Almost unaware, I have said, not totally unaware. For probably every one of us has had experiences in which we have actually felt the presence of some strange person about the premises or place. The effect of the report of this sense is particularly noticed in the region of the solar plexus, or pit of the stomach. It manifests in a peculiar unpleasant feeling of goneness in that region. It produces a feeling of something wrong, which disturbs one in a strange way. This is generally accompanied by a bristling up or a creepy feeling along the spine. The organs registering the presence of a strange or alien creature consist of certain delicate nerves of the surface of the skin, generally connected with the roots of the downy hair of the body, or resting where their hair roots would naturally be in the case of hairless skin. These seem to report directly to the solar plexus, which then acts quickly by reflex action on the other parts of the body, causing an instinctive feeling to either fly the scene or else to crouch and hide oneself. This feeling, as may be seen at once, is an inheritance from our savage ancestors, or perhaps from our lowly animal ancestral roots. It is a most unpleasant feeling, and the race escapes much discomfort by reason of its comparative absence. I have said that occultists have developed, or rather redeveloped, this sense. They do this in order to have a harmonious, well-developed, sevenfold sense system. It increases their general awareness. Certain other knowledge of the occultist neutralizes the unpleasant features of the manifestation of the sense, and he finds it a very valuable adjunct to his senses of seeing and hearing, particularly in the cases in which he is approached by persons having antagonistic or hostile feelings towards him. As in such cases, this faculty is particularly active. In connection with the telepathic sense, to be described a little further on, this sense operates to give a person that sense of warning when approached by another person whose feelings are not friendly to him, no matter how friendly the outward appearance of that person may be. These two extra senses cooperate to give a person that instinctive feeling of warning, which all of us know in our own experience. This particular, as well as the telepathic sense, may be cultivated or developed by anyone who wishes to take the time and trouble to accomplish the work. The principle is simple, merely the same principle that one uses in developing any of the other physical attributes, namely use and exercise. The first step, A, is the recognition of the existence of the sense itself. Then B, the attention given to its reports. Then C, frequent use and exercise. Just think of how you would proceed to develop any of the 5 ordinary senses, hearing, sight, or touch, for instance. Then follow the same process in the cultivation of this extra sense, or 2 senses, and you will accomplish the same kind of results. Now, let us consider the other extra physical sense, the telepathic sense, or sense of becoming aware of the thought waves or emotional waves of other persons. Now, as strange as this may appear to some persons, the most of persons in fact, this telepathic faculty is not a higher faculty or sense, but is really a comparatively low one. Just like the sense just described, it is possessed in a higher degree by many of the lower animals and by primitive and savage man. That which really is higher in this kind of psychic phenomena is the manifestation of that higher form of telepathy by use of the astral counterpart of this sense, which we shall consider later under the name of clairvoyance, for this is really a particular phase of clairvoyance. As strange as it may appear to some of you, the lower animals possess a kind of telepathic sense. An animal is usually aware of your feelings towards it and your purposes regarding it. Domestic animals lose some of this by generations of confinement, while the wild animals have the sense highly developed. But even some of the domestic animals have more or less of it. You will readily recognize this fact if you have ever tried to cut out a certain animal from a herd or a flock. You will find that the animal in some way has sensed your designs upon it, no matter how indirectly you approach it, and it will begin circling around the other animals, twisting in and out in its endeavors to be lost to your sight. The other animals likewise will seem to know that you're after only that particular one and will manifest but little fright or distrust comparatively. I have frequently seen this thing in my own country and in others among poultry raisers. The poultryman will think to himself, now I am going to get that black hen with the yellow legs, that fat, clumsy one. And he'll move toward the flock slowly, with an air of unconcern. But lo, as soon as he gets near the creatures, that black hen will be seen edging her way to the outer circle of the flock on the opposite side from the man. When the man moves around to her side, she'll be found to have plunged into the crowd, and so it's hard to find her. Sometimes she will actually sneak off or try to sneak off and conceal herself in a dark corner or back of some large object. Every poultryman will smile when this occurrence is mentioned to him. He knows by experience that hens have a way of sensing what he has in his mind regarding them. Moreover, as every farmer knows, the crow family has a most uncanny way of sensing the intentions of the farmer who is trying to destroy them, and shows great sagacity in defeating those intentions. But while the crow is a very intelligent bird, one of the wisest of the bird family, in fact, it obtains its knowledge of what is in the mind of the man, not alone from figuring on his intentions, but rather from that instinctive sensing of his mental states. The hen, as all know, is a very stupid bird, showing but very little intelligent activity, but nevertheless, she is very quick about sensing the poultryman's designs on her, though generally very stupid about planning out a skillful escape. Every owner of dogs, cats, horses, has had many opportunities for observing the manifestation of this sense on the part of those animals. Every dog feels the emotional states of his owner and others. The horse knows when the owner seeks to throw the halter over his neck, or when, on the contrary, he is merely walking through the field. Cats sense their owner's feelings and thoughts, and often resent them. Of course, the lower animals can sense merely elementary mental states, and generally only emotional states, as their minds are not developed so as to interpret the more complex mental states. Primitive men likewise almost instinctively sense the feelings and designs of other men. They do not reason the thing out, but rather merely feel the ideas and designs of the others. The women of the lower races are mere adept in interpreting these sense reports than are the men. Women are more sensitive as a rule than are men on any point on the scale of development. Side note, I think when he says the lower races, he just means like early primitive man, cavemen, or people that just still live in the jungle and never went into a city. But I'm apologizing for his words or lack of sensitivity by that phrase, lower races. I don't think he means color of skin there, actually. I think he means, all right, getting back to his words. When we come to consider ordinary telepathy in the case of men of civilized countries, we find a more complex state of affairs. While civilized man as a whole has lost some of the quick telepathic perception of the lower races, he has, in some exceptional cases, acquired a faculty of receiving and interpreting more complex thought forms and mental states. The investigations of the Society for Psychical Research, and those of private investigators as well, have shown us that a picture of a complicated geometrical design held in the mind of one person may be carried to and received by the mind of another person who reproduces the design on paper. In the same way, complicated thoughts have been transmitted and received. But these are only exceptional cases. In many cases, the sense seems almost dead in the ordinary civilized individual, except when aroused in exceptional cases. But nevertheless, the majority of persons have occasional flashes of telepathy, just enough to make them realize that there's something in it. The renewed interest in the subject of late years has directed the public mind to the phenomena of telepathy, and consequently, more persons are now taking note of the cases of thought transference coming under their personal notice. It must be remembered, of course, that all of us are constantly receiving thought waves and feeling thought influence unconsciously. I'm speaking now only of the conscious perception of the thought waves. Many investigators have so developed their telepathic sense that they are able at times to obtain wonderful test results. But it has been a source of disappointment to many of them to discover that at other times, under apparently similar conditions, their success was very slight. So true is this that many authorities have accepted the theory that telepathy is more or less spontaneous and cannot be produced to order. This theory is true as far as it goes, but there is a side of the case that these investigators overlook, probably because of their lack of the occult principles involved in the phenomena. I mean this, that their most brilliant successes have been obtained by reason of their unconscious switching on of the astral telepathic sense, the clairvoyant sense. While in this condition, they obtained startling results, but the next time they tried, they failed to awaken the astral sense and therefore had to depend entirely upon the physical telepathic sense, and consequently their results were comparatively poor. You'll understand the difference and distinction between physical sense telepathy and astral sense telepathy if you will carefully consider the nature of each, as I now shall present it to you. I ask you close your attention to what I shall have to say on the subject in the remaining pages of this chapter. I ask your close attention, not close. I'll reread that. Sorry. I ask your close attention to what I have to say on the subject in the remaining pages of this chapter. Do not pass over these explanations as quote-unquote dry, for unless you have a clear fundamental understanding of the thing, you will never be able to get the best results. This is true in every phase of learning, physical as well as psychical. One must get started right in order to obtain the best results. In the first place, every thought process, every emotional activity, every creation of ideas is accompanied by a manifestation of force. In fact, is the result of the manifestation of a force. Without entering at all into the question of what mind is in itself, we may rest firmly on the natural fact that every manifestation of mental or emotional activity is the result of an action of the brain or nervous system manifesting in a form of vibrations, just as in the case of the manifestation of electricity, in which certain chemical elements are consumed or transformed. So in the case of mental or emotional activity, there is a consuming or transformation of the substance of which the nervous system is composed. When I say nervous system in this connection, I include the brain or brains of man, for these are but a part of his great nervous system in which all emotion or mental activity is manifested. Moreover, just as there is no real destruction of matter in any of nature's processes, all seeming destruction being but a transformation, so in the case before us, there is a transformation of the energy released in the thought or emotional process. We may grasp this idea more clearly if we consider what takes place into transformation of electrical energy. For instance, transmit a strong current of electricity over a fine wire or filament of carbon, and lo, the current is transformed into light. Use another kind of channel transmission and the current is transformed into heat. Every electric light or electric heating apparatus is proof of this. In the same way, the electric current is sent into space in the form of wireless waves. These waves coming in contact with certain forms of apparatus are transformed into forms of force, which are recognized, registered, and interpreted by the wireless operator. In the same way, the telepathic waves of energy are sent forth by the activity released by the thought or emotion state. These waves travel in every direction, and when they come in contact with physical apparatus sufficiently sensitive to register them, they may be reproduced or retransformed into thought or mental states similar to those which originally sent them forth. You talk into the receiver of the telephone, and the sound waves are transformed into waves of electricity. These electrical waves travel over the wires, and on reaching the other end of the telephone circuit, are again transformed into sound waves, which are heard by the ear of the listener. Well then, when your brain sends out thought waves, these travel until they are received by the apparatus in the brain of another person. When they are retransformed into thoughts of the same kind that originally caused the thought waves, when they are retransformed into thoughts of the same kind that originally caused the thought waves. I will have much more to say on this subject in the next chapter. I will pause here to point out the difference between the phenomena of this form of telepathy and the higher form, which is really a phase of clairvoyance. Now, in the case of what may be called a clairvoyant telepathy or astral telepathy, the ordinary thought waves play but a small part. Instead of these, there is a transmission of force along the channels of the astral plane. It is almost impossible to describe the phenomena of the astral plane in the terms of the physical. I may illustrate the matter in a general way by saying that is something like your astral self actually extending itself out until it touches the astral self of the other person, and thus actually feels the astral activities there, instead of it being a case of something like waves traveling along space between brain and brain. Do you get this clearly? This is about as near to it as I can explain it to you at this place. Telepathy is simply a matter of the transmission and receiving of waves of vibratory force which have traveled along the ether between two persons. But clairvoyance or astral telepathy is something like your mind being extended out until it actually touches the mind of the other person and sees what is there. I shall have much to say regarding the working out of the processes of clairvoyance as we proceed. I have merely given the above explanation for the purpose of distinguishing between ordinary telepathy and clairvoyance, so as to prevent you from falling into a common error. Now let us consider the phenomena of ordinary telepathy. This is very wonderful in itself, although it is on a lower plane of activity than its astral or clairvoyant counterpart. Well, oh my God, there you have it. Lesson 1 and 2. I recorded them separate so that you could take a pause between the lessons in case it was a lot to assimilate. This is a lot of information. You might find yourself listening to this episode later to maybe take further notes and learn it deeper. I think I might actually listen to it while I'm reading it to see if I get a few more things out of it. But my God, 6 or 7 things that were said in this manuscript, like phrases or whole sentences even, are things that have come up for me in the past 12 hours. I am like blown away. I don't know if you noticed when I was reading the first chapter, I started getting overloaded and overburdened by a massive amount of energy. And then I felt my 12th chakra expand all the frickin' way. By the time I got to the second lesson, reading of it, my crown chakra was fully 100% open. I had to stop, and I was just like, even right now, I'm feeling this weight and pressure on my crown chakra, but I feel all of my chakras all the way up. I feel all of my shells of chakras. You got to listen to Michael Sherahan to understand what I mean by that. I felt them all. I feel everything. I mean, woo, baby, this is blowing my mind. I'm going to tell you a little bit more tomorrow about what happened during the making of this episode. I'm going to do a behind the scenes expose tomorrow on this for sure. But I can't wait. I mean, literally, I got a massive download on a massive healing program I'm going to make. Not for this show, but in general to sell on my website. It's going to be beyond anything that has ever been done on earth. I'm not going to talk more about it. But that happened when my 12th chakra just opened up. So I'm like, oh my God. So the little behind the scene thing right now that I can tell you while I'm reading this, my chakra, I'm having a conversation with God while I'm reading the book, focused and concentrating on what I'm reading, also conversating with him. And at the same time, I'm seeing my friend's sick mother, and I, with X-ray vision, was able to scan her whole body, which I've never been able to do. And I know exactly why she's having the lung problem she's having. So as soon as I publish this, I'm going to go write him a note and tell him what emotional stuff she needs to release. He has to help her because she's not going to release him from living in her house. And he doesn't want to because he's attached to the grief that's causing, and she's on like many medications right now, and she's very, very sick. So I have to send her more and more healing energy. But I mean, so I'm like, all this stuff is going on at once while I'm reading this to you, and I'm projecting it. And then also then I started seeing your faces as you're listening to the show. I'm aware of the future. I'm aware of who is sitting with their cat listening to this while I said the word cat. And while I'm mentioning it now, I know who else is now knowing that I'm thinking about you. I'm going to say hi, Sugar, and now you know what I mean. I'm saying hi to someone's cat. Hi, Sugar. And also hi, Ginger, because I know Ginger's been listening to this whole thing. And you guys know who you are. I wanted to say thank you to Maxie. Okay, and I'm going to get this totally wrong. Okay, sorry. Cancel that. I'm going to say thank you to Maggie. Thank you to Trixie for favoriting my podcast. And a very special shout out to Jasmine. Thank you for putting it out there to all of your people on Instagram that you listen to my show every night. And thank you for telling me in a private message that you love my show. It's amazing. Oh my God, it just made my heart soar so big, and I feel so happy. I'm glad that I am reaching you guys and that I'm touching you in many different ways and teaching you, and I am in my bliss and passion doing this, so I love it. So there you go, and that's what's going on. All right, guys, so I'm gonna wrap this up because this is gonna be a very long episode. But I gotta tell you something. I still need your ghost stories. Send me your ghost stories to metaphysicalsoulspeak@gmail.com or anchor.fm/metaphysical. I need ghost stories to do a very special metaphysical ghost speak for Halloween. And I need your Santa Claus stories. I want to know anytime you had an experience of the fat, jolly old man, Saint Nicholas himself, Grand Père Noël, if he was in your presence and you sensed him and the energy shifted on Christmas or Christmas Eve, if you saw a red light you could not explain in the sky and it was like a whoosh or a rush of energy, I want to hear about it. If you got a picture of him, I want to see it. I'll put it on my website. Same thing with the ghosts. Also UFOs. We will have a UFO web part of my website as well. I really want to hear these stories, and I know that you guys want to hear these stories from other people, so you have to contribute if you have one. I'm putting out a huge call for these stories. In fact, I'm in 2 days, I'm sending out an advertisement to 155,000 people. Calling for their ghost stories as well. And then in 2 weeks, I'm going to just do a whole advertisement only on the stories that I need. Because I want to do a very, very special Halloween and a very, very special Christmas. I want you guys to feel the magic of these holidays, but they're very different kinds of magic. But I want to get to the heart of the matter. Because these are human experiences, even though they seem supernatural or paranormal. A lot of people, more than you would think, do have these. They do have these phenomena. So I want to know. I have a lot of Santa Claus stories. I've got to write out all of my personal Santa Claus stories. I might have a few that you may be hearing throughout the month of December, but I want a very special listener supported holiday. Okay, I want you guys to send me your stories for Halloween, for Metaphysical Ghost Speak, and for the Christmas edition. No, that's all I gotta say about that. I love you guys. I'm honored that you're on this ascension path journey with me. I'm glad you're listening to my show. I want to thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for sending my links to all of your people, for favoriting, liking, subscribing, starring, whatever it's called, on the podcast player that you use. Thank you for forwarding it all to your Facebook groups. I really, really need to get the word out and grow this sucker, baby. We need to grow it. We need to tear the roof off the sucker. Well, I want this to go far and wide. A lot of people are thirsty for this information. They're waking up, and when they wake up, they're hungry for knowledge and they're thirsty for the cosmic inspiration. So please send this stuff out to as many as possible. Mailing lists, whatever you could think of. Thank you for doing that. A lot of you have already started, and I'm grateful. I definitely need the help with this. I am not a marketing guru. Otherwise, I would probably have a lot more listeners right now. I am looking for a volunteer to help me with marketing. So if you have an extra hour or two every week and you want to help me with that, or if you just want to simply write a positive review on iTunes, that would be a huge blessing, because that will go a long way. I want to give a special shout out to the Netherlands and Sweden for keeping me on your charts in the past week in the iTunes metaphysical. Basically, it's the religious and spirituality category. And I'm really happy I'm being heard in the Netherlands and Sweden, and in Ireland, as well as Australia and New Zealand. And a lot of you are listening in California, and I'm so glad, because you are my home people. You are my homies in Cali. You know, that is always going to be where I'm from. And that just makes me cry, because I miss California so much. I love Ecuador so much. It's like this equal amount of love, right? And I'm torn between torn between two lovers, feeling like a fool. That's how I feel, honestly. I feel like I'm almost cheating on California with Ecuador. But if I go to California, I'll be cheating on Ecuador with California. It's kind of weird. I'm in a threesome relationship with two countries, with the state of Azua and the state of California. It's pretty insane. But I do. I really, really miss my California. So I did want to say, just, you know what? Honestly, you guys have so many fires and so many disasters going on in California right now. Not to mention the East Coast and all you guys over there. And I know I have a lot of people from Florida, Miami, Jacksonville. I got a lot of you guys over there. I want to thank you guys too. And I've gotten a few numbers coming out in New York, so I want to say thank you to that. And everyone in between, you know, and all over the world. Thank you guys for listening. It humbles me to the core, actually. I gotta go because I'm too weepy. But thank you so much. And by the way, I guess you get extremely weepy when your 12th chakra opens up and you start to feel everybody on the planet at once. Oh, so it's going to be a super fun night. And I'm burning, I'm like sweating like it's 100 degrees out. And I'm looking at my thing, it's only 54 degrees out. If I keep going, it's going to be 56 degrees in like a minute. All right. I love you guys. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm now signing off with peace and and joy and the high vibes of the holy fifth dimension. Until next time, peace.